Chosen one, why do you wake up at 3 a.m. feeling like you're drowning in quicksand? Why does every victory in your life feel like it came with a price tag that nearly broke you? Why, after 7 decades of faithful service, faithful giving, faithful believing, do you still feel like you're running on empty while watching others coast through life? Stop, right there. What if I told you that every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, every moment you whispered, "God, have you forgotten me?" was actually heaven taking inventory? What if your exhaustion isn't evidence of your failure, but proof of your qualification for something so magnificent that ordinary people couldn't handle it? Listen carefully. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. Let that word weary echo in your chest, because that's you, isn't it? Weary from carrying burdens that were never meant for your shoulders. Weary from fighting battles that should have been fought by someone else. Weary from being strong when your spirit is screaming for relief. Chosen one, if you're hearing this right now, it is not by accident. You didn't scroll here, you were summoned. Because God Himself is saying something that will shatter every limitation you've accepted. You've done enough. Now let me take over. Here's the shocking truth they don't want you to know. Your struggle wasn't random. Your pain wasn't pointless. Every tear you've cried in secret has been liquid gold in heaven's economy, and today, this very moment, your spiritual bank account is about to overflow in ways that will leave you breathless. Picture this. An 82-year-old man, hunched over, carrying a backpack filled with bricks. For 50 years, he's been adding one more brick every rejection, every financial struggle, every health scare, every disappointment. His back is breaking, his knees are buckling, but he keeps walking because that's what he's always done. That's you, beloved. But God is about to take the weight off. Before we go deeper into this life-altering revelation, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. Right now, I need you to do something prophetic. Comment 777 below, or if you're alone, say out loud, "I receive it." This isn't superstition, this is your spirit agreeing with heaven's declaration over your life. Stay with me to the end, because before this hour is over, your soul will feel lighter, your future clearer, and your spirit will know heaven is fighting for you. The takeover begins now. How many nights have you sat at your kitchen table at 2 a.m., staring at medical bills you can't afford, wondering if God has forgotten your address? How many times have you reached across the bed for a hand that's no longer there, feeling the crushing weight of loneliness that makes your chest ache? How many Sunday mornings have you sat in that same pew, surrounded by people, yet feeling more isolated than a castaway on a deserted island? You thought retirement would be golden. Instead, it feels like fool's gold, shiny on the surface, but worthless when the bills come due. Social security that barely covers your medications. Medicare that leaves gaps bigger than the Grand Canyon. A nest egg that got scrambled by market crashes you never saw coming. But it's not just the money, is it? It's the mirror that reflects a stranger back at you. Gray hair where vitality once lived. Prescription bottles where energy used to flow. Doctor appointments that multiply faster than rabbits. Your body, this earthly tent the Apostle Paul spoke of, feels more like a collapsing circus tent held up by medical tape and stubborn willpower. Listen to David's raw cry in Psalm 13. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? That's your voice, isn't it? How long have you been asking the same question? Feeling like your prayers bounce off heaven's ceiling like rubber balls. Here's what's eating at your soul. You've been faithful for 70, 80, 90 years. You tithed when you couldn't afford groceries. You served when your body screamed for rest. You believed when believing felt like swallowing broken glass. Yet here you are, broken, and wondering if you've been a fool your entire life. The enemy whispers his poison daily. Look around you. The wicked prosper. The godless get promoted. The faithless get healed. But you get forgotten. That voice gets louder at 3 a.m. when sleep abandons you and worry moves in like an unwelcome houseguest who never leaves. You watch your adult children struggle, carrying burdens you can't lift anymore. Your grandchildren grow up in a world you don't recognize. Technology moves faster than your arthritic fingers can follow. You feel like a relic in a museum, admired for surviving but no longer relevant to the living. The crushing weight of being needed less while needing more. The humiliation of asking for help when you've been the helper your entire life. The fear that haunts every chest pain, every forgotten word, every stumble. Is this the beginning of the end? Job understood this darkness. My spirit is broken, my days are cut short, the grave awaits me, he cried in Job 17:1. Yet something deep inside him refused to curse God and die. That same something flickers in you, doesn't it? A stubborn ember of faith that won't be extinguished, even when everything else feels cold and dead. But here's the question that keeps you awake. Why does life seem heavier for you than for others? Why do your prayers seem to echo in empty hallways, while others walk in supernatural ease? Why does every blessing feel like it came with a curse attached? Every victory wrapped in loss? Moses felt this exact weight at 80 years old, banished to the wilderness, tending sheep, watching his dreams rot in the desert sun. Surely he thought his time was over. Surely he believed God had moved on to younger, stronger vessels. For 40 years, he carried the burden of knowing he was called for something greater while living something lesser. The burden you're carrying isn't just personal pain, it's generational weight. You're carrying your parents' unfulfilled dreams, your children's struggles, your spouse's final wishes. You're bearing the accumulated disappointments of decades, the compound interest of delayed promises, the spiritual debt of a world that seems to have forgotten how to believe. Your shoulders weren't designed for this load. Your heart wasn't meant to hold this much sorrow. Your spirit wasn't created to carry everyone else's expectations while your own hopes suffocate under the pressure. The cruelest burden of all, the silence. Not just God's silence, though, that cuts deepest, but the world's silence about your pain. Society celebrates youth and dismisses age. Culture worships strength and ignores weakness. Even the church sometimes treats seniors like spiritual furniture present, but not particularly useful. You've become invisible in a world obsessed with being seen, irrelevant in a culture addicted to relevance, slow in a society that only values speed. The very wisdom you've earned through decades of fire feels worthless in a generation that Googles answers instead of seeking understanding. Why does this burden feel so specific to you? Why does your suffering seem more intense, your struggles more severe, your pain more pointed than what others endure? Right now, I want you to do something that might feel impossible. Wherever you are, whether you're alone in your living room, sitting in your car, or lying in bed, unable to sleep, I want you to whisper these words. God, I surrender my burden. Say it again, softer this time. God, I surrender my burden. Your surrender today is your first step into freedom. But freedom from what? And freedom into what? The answer will stun you, beloved, because what you're carrying isn't what you think it is. And why you're carrying it will shatter every assumption you've made about your purpose. We'll get there. But stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will explain why your burden has been so heavy and why heaven has been silent while you've been suffering. The answer isn't what you expect. It's far more beautiful than you've dared to hope. You know what breaks my heart? It's watching God's most faithful children, people who've tithed when they couldn't afford groceries, who've prayed until their knees bled, who've served until their backs broke, sitting in their living rooms at 78 years old, still wondering if they've done enough, still wondering if God sees them, still carrying weight that's crushing their spirit one sleepless night at a time. But what if I told you that your exhaustion isn't evidence of your failure? What if your weariness is actually your diploma? What if every burden you've carried, every tear you've shed, every night you've laid awake wondering, God, where are you, has been heaven's way of saying, you've graduated from the school of striving. It's time for the master class of miracles. Listen to me, chosen one. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been like that ship captain in the perfect storm. Hurricane winds screaming at 150 miles per hour, 40-foot waves crashing over your bow. You've been gripping that wheel with white knuckles, fighting every gust, battling every wave, believing that if you just hold on tight enough, if you just navigate better, if you just try harder, somehow you'll find calm waters. But you're drowning, and you know it. Your hands are raw from gripping, your shoulders are screaming from the strain, your heart is pounding so hard you can hear it over the thunder. And in that moment when you think you can't hold on for one more second, when you're about to let go and let the storm win, suddenly you hear footsteps behind you. The captain of heaven's navy walks onto your bridge. His voice cuts through the chaos like a sword through silk. Child, hand me the wheel. That's what's happening to you right now. God himself is stepping onto the bridge of your life and saying, you've done enough. I'm taking over from here. But here's what most preachers won't tell you, and it's going to shatter everything you thought you knew about faith. God is not asking you to strive harder. He's not demanding more sacrifice. He's not requiring you to prove your worthiness through one more decade of struggle. He's saying, enough striving, enough worrying, enough carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. The psalmist knew this secret when he wrote in Psalm 55-22, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. But look at that word cast. It doesn't mean gently place or carefully set down. It means hurl. It means throw with everything you've got. It means take that backpack of bricks you've been carrying and fling it at heaven's feet. Because here's what the enemy doesn't want you to discover. Your cares were never meant to be carried. They were meant to be cast. Think about this, beloved. When Jesus walked on water, what did Peter do? He stepped out of the boat. But here's what most people miss. Peter didn't learn to walk on water through years of swimming lessons. He didn't graduate from a maritime academy. The moment his foot touched that liquid surface, the laws of physics bowed to the presence of the divine. That's your moment, right now. This isn't about improving your swimming technique. This is about stepping into the supernatural. But the enemy has been whispering lies to you for decades, hasn't he? You're too old. You've missed your season. Your best days are behind you. God uses younger people for big miracles. Those aren't just thoughts. Those are demons assigned specifically to your calling, working overtime to convince you that divine intervention has an expiration date. What a lie from the pit of hell. Moses was 80 when he split the Red Sea. Abraham was 100 when he became the father of nations. Sarah was 90 when she laughed at the impossible and then birthed it. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah and proclaimed his arrival to all of Jerusalem. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Every gray hair is a crown of wisdom. Every wrinkle is a map of God's faithfulness. Every scar is a testimony that you survived what should have killed you. And now, in this hour, when the world is desperate for voices that have been tested by fire and found faithful, God is saying, now. Now is when I move through you, in ways that will make your past struggles look like warm-up exercises. Malachi 3:10 contains a promise so radical, so explosive, that it should make every struggling saint stop dead in their tracks. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. Did you catch that? Not room enough to store it. God isn't promising enough. He's promising overflow. He's promising abundance so excessive, so overwhelming, that your containers will crack under the weight of his goodness. But here's the shocking truth. Your overflow isn't just financial, it's emotional, it's physical, it's relational, it's spiritual. God is about to flood every dry place in your life until the desert of your disappointment becomes a river of restoration. Ephesians 3:20 seals this promise with divine authority. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. Immeasurably more, not slightly more, not eventually more, immeasurably more than your mind can calculate, more than your heart can contain, more than your situation can explain. Right now, heaven's floodgates are creaking open over your life. Can you hear them? The sound of supernatural breakthrough rumbling like thunder in the distance. The atmosphere around you is shifting. The spiritual climate over your circumstances is changing. What felt impossible this morning is about to become inevitable this evening. But this divine takeover requires something from you. Not more effort, surrender. Not more striving, trust. Type it in the comments right now or whisper it to heaven. I trust you, Lord. Those 4 words are about to become the key that unlocks the door to your miracle. The storm that's been battering your ship for decades is about to meet the captain who commands the wind and waves. And when he takes the wheel, everything changes. But what happens when God actually takes control of your circumstances? What does divine takeover look like in the life of an ordinary believer? Hold tight, because what I'm about to reveal will transform how you see every challenge you're facing. But you're sitting there thinking, this sounds too good to be true. How do I know God really takes over? Let me tell you 3 stories that will shatter every doubt in your heart and prove that your age, your circumstances, your past failures mean absolutely nothing when heaven decides to move. Joseph's story starts in a pit. 17 years old, thrown into a hole by his own brothers who wanted him dead, sold into slavery for 20 pieces of silver, falsely accused of rape, forgotten in an Egyptian prison for years. If you met Joseph at 30, you'd see a man whose dreams had turned into nightmares. His family had betrayed him, his reputation was destroyed. His future looked like a concrete wall with no door. But Genesis 41:14 changes everything. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. In one day Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister, not because he earned it, not because he networked his way to the top, because God said, enough, I'm taking over now. Joseph didn't just get a job, he got authority over the entire Egyptian economy. The same brothers who threw him in the pit, they ended up bowing before him, begging for food. The same circumstances that should have destroyed him became the very foundation of his destiny. Dear chosen one, what pit are you in right now? Financial ruin? Health scares? Family rejection? What if that pit isn't your grave? What if it's your launching pad? Then there's Moses, 80 years old. 80! While you're worried about being too old at 70, Moses was just getting started at 80. For 40 years, he'd been a forgotten shepherd in the middle of nowhere, tending sheep, probably thinking his best days were ancient history. His hands were weathered, his back was bent. By every human standard, he was past his prime. But Exodus 3:10 records God's shocking declaration. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses didn't get a retirement party, he got the assignment of a lifetime. Not despite his age, because of his age. Every year of waiting had been building character. Every decade of obscurity had been developing dependence on God. When Moses stood before Pharaoh, he wasn't speaking as an 80-year-old has-been. He was speaking as heaven's representative with 8 decades of preparation behind him. The Red Sea didn't part because Moses was young and strong. It parted because God had finally found someone humble enough, broken enough, desperate enough to let him take over completely. How many of you have been telling yourself you're too old for God to use? Moses would laugh at that lie. And David, the forgotten son. When the prophet Samuel came looking for the next king of Israel, David's own father didn't even bother to call him in from the fields. He was the youngest, the smallest, the most overlooked. While his brothers stood tall and impressive, David was invisible. just a kid with a slingshot and a heart full of worship songs nobody heard. But 1 Samuel 16-7 reveals God's shocking perspective. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. David didn't become king because he was qualified by human standards. He became king because God said, "That one, the one everybody forgot, that's my choice." The same boy who was too young to matter became the man who wrote half the Psalms. The same shepherd who was overlooked by his family became the king who established an eternal throne. The pattern is undeniable. God specializes in taking the discarded and making them powerful. But this isn't just ancient history, beloved. This same God is still moving today. Anna Mary Robertson was nobody special. A farmer's wife in upstate New York who spent 78 years doing what farmers' wives do: cooking, cleaning, raising children, surviving. When arthritis crippled her hands and she could no longer do embroidery, her sister suggested she try painting. At 78 years old, Anna picked up a paintbrush for the first time. The world knew her as Grandma Moses. Her paintings hang in museums worldwide. She didn't just discover a hobby, she discovered a destiny that had been waiting 8 decades to emerge. When reporters asked her about starting so late in life, she said, "Life is what we make it. Always has been, always will be." Harlan Sanders was 65, broke, living on Social Security checks, when his restaurant failed and the new interstate bypassed his town. By every measure, he was finished. A senior citizen with nothing but a chicken recipe and a dream that seemed impossible. He drove around the country sleeping in his car, getting rejected by restaurant after restaurant. 1,009 times they said no. But on attempt number 1,010, someone said yes. Today, that washed-up 65-year-old's face is on KFC restaurants in 145 countries. His recipe feeds millions daily. His failure at 65 became the foundation of a global empire. Do you see the pattern emerging? Every closed door wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Every delay wasn't denial, it was preparation. Every season of waiting wasn't punishment, it was positioning. Your struggles haven't been evidence that God forgot you. They've been evidence that God was preparing you for something so significant that it required decades of refining. Joseph needed the pit to appreciate the palace. Moses needed the wilderness to value the calling. David needed the fields to understand the throne. And you needed every trial, every setback, every moment of feeling invisible to develop the character that can handle what God is about to entrust to you. But here's what will shock you. There is one spiritual key that unlocks all of this transformation. One divine principle that separates those who stay stuck from those who see God's takeover manifest in their lives. I'll share it in a moment, but first you need to understand why your current season of struggle is about to become your season of supernatural breakthrough. You've been carrying the conductor's baton your entire life, haven't you? Standing in front of an orchestra of chaos, trying to make your health play in harmony, forcing your finances to hit the right notes, desperately waving that baton at your children, your marriage, your dreams, thinking that if you just conducted harder, louder, longer, somehow the music would finally sound like the symphony you've been praying for. But here's what's breaking God's heart tonight. You're exhausted from conducting an orchestra that was never meant to follow your rhythm. Listen to me, chosen one. Every sleepless night you've spent orchestrating solutions, every morning you've woken up mentally rehearsing your battle plan, every moment you felt like Atlas holding up your world, you've been trying to play God's part while he's been waiting patiently in the wings, holding the real conductor's baton. Hebrews 11:6 cuts straight through our religious pretending. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. But here's where most people get it twisted. They think faith means believing God can do something. That's not faith, that's acknowledgement. Even demons believe God can move mountains. Real faith, the kind that unlocks heaven's vault, is trusting that God will move your mountain, even when every circumstance screams otherwise. You've spent decades believing God can heal your marriage, can restore your finances, can bring your prodigal children home. But have you trusted that He will? Have you released that white-knuckled grip on control and said, God, I believe you're already working, even when I can't see it? The difference between can and will is the difference between staying stuck and stepping into supernatural breakthrough. Proverbs 3-5-6 doesn't suggest it commands. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. Your understanding has been your prison, beloved. Your logic has been your limitation. How many times have you analyzed yourself out of a miracle? How many times have you reasoned away God's promises because they didn't make sense to your finite mind? Let me shock you with truth. God's ways are not just different from yours, they're opposite. When you see impossibility, He sees opportunity. When you see dead ends, He sees new beginnings. When you see failure, He sees fertilizer for your future. But here's the key that unlocks everything: surrender. Now, before you roll your eyes and think I'm about to preach some weak, passive surrender, stop. Surrender isn't giving up. Surrender is giving over. It's not raising the white flag of defeat. It's raising the banner of trust. Think about that orchestra again. You've been standing there, sweat pouring down your face, arms aching from conducting, watching instrument after instrument play out of tune despite your best efforts. Your marriage section sounds discordant. Your financial section keeps missing the beat. Your health section is playing in the wrong key entirely. Then God steps onto the podium and says, "Child, step aside, let me compose." The moment you hand Him that baton, not because you've given up, but because you've finally realized who the real maestro is, watch what happens. The same instruments that wouldn't respond to your frantic conducting suddenly fall into perfect harmony under His gentle direction. This isn't theory, chosen one. This is the difference between those who die exhausted from trying to control their destiny and those who live abundantly by trusting the one who wrote it. But surrender terrifies you, doesn't it? Because surrender means admitting that for 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been conducting with the wrong sheet music. It means confessing that your best efforts, your strongest willpower, your most brilliant strategies have produced a symphony that sounds nothing like the masterpiece God intended. Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. Your admission of weakness is heaven's invitation for strength. Your confession of failure is God's cue for favor. Your surrender is His signal to take over. Faith and surrender are two sides of the same coin. Faith says, I believe you can. Surrender says, I trust you will. Faith opens the door. Surrender invites God to walk through it. You know what's tragic? Most people die with their symphony unfinished, not because God wasn't willing to complete it, but because they never stopped conducting long enough to let Him take over. Right now, there's a 7-8-year-old woman in Toledo who's been trying to conduct her son's addiction for 23 years. Every intervention, every rehab program, every midnight phone call, she's been waving that baton, trying to force harmony from chaos. What if tonight she finally laid down the conductor's baton and picked up the praying hands? There's an 82-year-old man in Phoenix whose finances have been out of tune since his retirement fund collapsed in 2008. For 15 years, he's been conducting a desperate financial symphony, trying to make Social Security and Medicare create the music of abundance. What if he stopped conducting his own rescue and started trusting the God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? This is your moment, chosen one. Not tomorrow when you feel ready, not next week when the situation gets worse. Right now, while your heart is still beating, while breath is still in your lungs, while God is still extending His hand toward that conductor's baton you've been clutching. The orchestra of your life is waiting. The musicians are ready. The concert hall of heaven is prepared. But the symphony cannot begin until you do the one thing that requires more courage than all your trying. Let go. Tonight I want you to get out your journal, yes, that dusty one in your nightstand drawer. Open it to a fresh page. Write these words. Lord, I give you the pen, write my story, sign your name, date it, because that page will become the first measure of the symphony God's been waiting to conduct through your life. But here's the question that will determine whether you live your remaining days in harmony or discord. Are you ready to step off that podium and trust the master conductor, or will you keep conducting your way into exhaustion until the music stops forever? Beloved, do you feel that? Something in the atmosphere around you just shifted. The spiritual barometric pressure over your life has changed, and what's about to break loose will leave you speechless. You've been walking in circles around your Jericho for decades. That mountain of medical bills, that's your Jericho. That loneliness that sits in your chest like a stone, that's your Jericho. That bank account that never seems to stretch far enough, that's your Jericho. But tonight, this very moment you're hearing my voice is your seventh day. Do remember what happened on the seventh day. The walls didn't just crack. They didn't slowly crumble. They collapsed, completely, instantaneously, with a sound that shook the earth and silenced the doubters. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. This is your moment. You're stepping out of lack into overflow, out of fear into faith, out of weariness into renewal. The exchange isn't coming. The exchange is here. Isaiah 40:31 declares with thunderous authority, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Soar, not kral, not survive. Soar. Right now, as these words penetrate your spirit, Heaven's accounting department is processing the greatest transfer in your family's history. Every tear you've cried in secret, every prayer you've whispered at 3 a.m., every moment you chose faith over fear, it's all been recorded, stored, compounded with divine interest. And the payout is about to blow your mind. The financial dimension, that debt that's been choking you for 15 years. God just signed the cancellation papers. That mortgage that keeps you awake at night, Heaven's escrow just closed in your favor. I'm not talking about some gradual improvement over the next decade. I'm talking about supernatural provision that defies every economic law you've ever known. Malachi 3:10 isn't just a suggestion, it's a guarantee. Test me in this and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. When God says floodgates, he means tsunami. When he says pour out, he means deluge. When he says not room enough, he means your current capacity can't contain what's coming. But here's what's going to shock your system. The money isn't coming through the channels you expect. Not through that pension, not through Social Security. God's about to open streams in the desert, fountains in the wasteland. Ideas will drop into your spirit like lightning. Opportunities will hunt you down. People will call you with offers that make no logical sense. The physical dimension, that body you've been apologizing for, that energy you think is gone forever, God is about to breathe new life into dry bones. Ezekiel 37 isn't just ancient history, it's your prophetic blueprint. What looked dead is about to rattle. What seemed finished is about to stand. What appeared hopeless is about to march. You've been accepting limitations that God never imposed. You've been agreeing with doctors' reports instead of heaven's records. But the same power that raised Christ from the dead lives in your mortal body right now. Romans 8:11 confirms it. That arthritis, it's about to bow. That diabetes, it's about to submit. That depression, it's about to flee. I'm talking about energy that makes your grandchildren ask, "What happened to Grandma?" I'm talking about vitality that makes your mirror appointments meetings with amazement. The fountain of youth isn't in Florida, it's in your renewed covenant with the Almighty. The emotional dimension, that loneliness that's been your unwanted companion for years, its eviction notice has been served. That grief that visits you in quiet moments, its lease has expired. God is about to populate your life with connections so divine, so perfectly orchestrated, that you'll wonder how you ever lived without them. Psalm 68:6 promises. God sets the lonely in families, not just any families, hand-picked, heaven-selected, purpose-aligned relationships that will make your golden years your glory years. People who see your worth, celebrate your wisdom, and refuse to let you fade into society's forgotten corners. That hole in your heart where your spouse used to be, God's not replacing that love, He's adding to it. Friendships that feel like coming home, spiritual children who call you for wisdom instead of money, a community that knows your name and counts your presence as precious. The spiritual dimension. But here's the dimension that will transform everything else. Your spiritual assignment. You thought retirement meant resting. God thinks it means redeployment. You thought your best years were behind you. Heaven knows your most powerful years are just beginning. Every struggle you've survived has been seminary education. Every tear you've shed has been liquid anointing. Every mountain you've climbed has been preparation for the Everest assignment God's about to reveal. At 70, 80, 90 years old, you're not winding down, you're being wound up for impact that will echo through eternity. Moses was 80 when he split seas. Caleb was 85 when he conquered mountains. Anna was 84 when she prophesied over the Messiah. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Your wrinkles aren't signs of decline, they're marks of divine preparation. The dreams you buried under responsibility, they're about to resurrect. The calling you silenced under survival, it's about to roar. The purpose you postponed under pressure, it's about to explode with power that makes hell tremble and heaven celebrate. This isn't just personal breakthrough, chosen one. This is generational transformation. Your overflow will become their inheritance. Your victory will become their foundation. Your testimony will become their blueprint for believing God still moves mountains. Right now, I need you to do something prophetic. Comment 888 below the number of new beginnings, fresh starts, divine resets. Let heaven know you're ready to step into dimensions of favor you've never experienced. And if God has ever surprised you with provision, healing, or breakthrough when you least expected it, share your testimony. Your story isn't just history, it's prophecy for someone else's future. Your miracle could be the match that lights someone else's faith. The exchange is complete, beloved. The takeover has begun. And what's about to unfold will prove that God saves His best wine for last, and you're about to taste vintage glory that will intoxicate you with hope and overwhelm you with overflow. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. We've walked through the valley of your pain together. We've witnessed heaven's declaration over your weary soul. You've felt the weight lifted, the burden transferred, the divine takeover beginning. But here's where most people make the fatal mistake. They think the blessing is the destination. They think God's takeover is about them sitting back and being served. That's not just wrong, it's dangerous. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not comfortable, not relieved, but alive with purpose burning in your chest like fire. I'll tell you when. It was the last time you poured yourself out for someone else. The last time you stopped hoarding heaven's gifts and started flowing them. Because here's the shocking truth about God's economy that no one wants to tell you. The moment you stop flowing, you start dying. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6-9. Did you catch that? Let us not become weary. Why would Paul warn against weariness in doing good? Because he knew the enemy's greatest weapon against the blessed. The lie that you've earned the right to stop giving. The deception that your age gives you permission to become a spiritual reservoir instead of a river. You want to know why so many seniors feel empty despite being blessed? Why nursing homes are filled with people who have everything but feel like they have nothing? Because they've been convinced that the golden years are about receiving instead of releasing. They've been sold the American dream of retirement from purpose instead of promotion into greater impact. But you are not a reservoir, beloved, you are a river. Think about the Dead Sea for a moment. It receives water from the Jordan River, beautiful, life-giving water. But you know what makes it dead? It has no outlet. It takes everything in and gives nothing out. The salt concentration becomes so high that nothing can live in it. It's called dead for a reason. Now think about the Sea of Galilee. Same Jordan River feeds it. But this sea has an outlet. It receives and releases, takes in and pours out. And what happens? It's teeming with life. Fish thrive. Communities flourish around its shores. It feeds nations. The difference between life and death isn't what flows into you, it's what flows through you. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Colossians 3:12-14. Notice the language here. Clothe yourselves, put on love. This isn't passive, this is active. This is daily choosing to be a conduit of heaven's character to a world that's dying of thirst. But I need to ask you something that might shock you. What if your financial struggles weren't about God withholding blessing? What if they were about you withholding flow? What if the very prosperity you've been praying for has been waiting on the other side of your obedience to pour out what you already have? Here's what breaks my heart. I meet seniors every week who tell me they can't afford to give, can't afford to bless others, can't afford to be generous while they're sitting on decades of accumulated wisdom, experience, and spiritual authority that could change lives. You think you have nothing to give? You're carrying the rarest commodity on earth, tested faith. Young people have energy, but you have endurance. They have passion, but you have proven character. They have dreams, but you have demonstrated faithfulness. And this generation, this lost, confused, digitally addicted generation, is drowning for lack of the very thing you carry in abundance, wisdom earned through fire. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul. Time is running out. Not your time, their time. While you've been sitting in church pews thinking your best days are behind you, an entire generation is committing suicide at record rates. While you've been convinced that your season of impact is over, millions of young adults are walking away from faith because they've never seen what real, tested, unshakable belief looks like. They don't need your perfection. They need your scars. They don't need your theology. They need your testimony. They don't need your answers. They need your questions and how God met you in them. When was the last time you mentored someone half your age? When was the last time you opened your home to someone struggling? When was the last time you used your social security check to surprise a single mother with groceries? When was the last time you called someone just to tell them you were praying for them? You want to feel alive again? You want to feel purpose flowing through your 70-year-old bones? You want to discover why God didn't take you home with your spouse? Start flowing. That grandson who only calls when he needs money? Call him first. That daughter who's drowning in debt raising 3 kids? Show up with dinner. That neighbor who's been battling cancer alone? Become their daily encouragement. That church struggling with finances? Become their anonymous blessing. But here's the part that will transform everything. Don't just give your money. Give your story. Don't just share your resources, share your scars. Don't just offer your wealth, offer your wounds that have become wisdom. Because here's what I know about rivers. They carve canyons, they move mountains, they shape landscapes, they create life wherever they flow. And the Colorado River didn't create the Grand Canyon in a day. It took millions of years of consistent, persistent, never-stopping flow. You think your impact is over. Your river has been flowing for 7 decades. Your influence has been carving canyons you can't even see. Your faithfulness has been shaping landscapes in the lives of people who may never thank you. But the question is, are you still flowing, or have you become a dam? Write down one way you will let your blessing flow this week, then do it. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel like it. This week. Because somewhere in your city, someone is about to give up. Someone is about to lose hope. Someone is about to make a decision that will destroy their life, and the only thing standing between them and disaster might be your willingness to flow. But there's something else about this divine responsibility that will determine not just their future, but yours. Chosen one, we've reached the moment heaven has been orchestrating your entire life. Everything you've endured, every tear you've shed, every sleepless night wondering if God forgot your address. It all led to this sacred hour when the Almighty Himself declares, "You've done enough. I'm taking over from here." But I need you to understand something that will shake you to your core. You think you've been failing because the struggle has been so intense. You think you've been forgotten because the answers have been delayed. You think you're too old, too tired, too broken for God to use you in mighty ways. That's the greatest lie ever told. Listen to what the Lord spoke through Jeremiah. "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future." Jeremiah 29:11. Those plans weren't written when you were young and strong. They were written for now, for this season. For this moment when you finally understand that your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. You've been carrying a baton in a relay race that's lasted 70, 80, maybe 90 years. Every step you took, you were running toward this moment. Every breath you drew was preparation for this divine handoff. And God is saying tonight, "Hand me the baton. Watch me finish what I started in you before the foundation of the world." Dear chosen one, your greatest mistake has been believing that you were supposed to carry this weight alone. Your deepest error was thinking that your struggle meant God wasn't fighting for you. But Romans 8:37 declares with thunderous authority, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us." More than conquerors, not barely surviving, not just getting by, more than conquerors. You've spent decades wondering why your prayers seemed to echo in empty air, why your children walked away, why your savings disappeared, why your body betrayed you, why the dreams you carried since childhood felt like cruel jokes whispered by a heartless universe. But what if I told you that every unanswered prayer was heaven saying, "Not yet, I have something better"? What if every closed door was God protecting you from settling for less than His best? What if every delay was divine timing, positioning you for a blessing so massive that receiving it any earlier would have destroyed you? The enemy has been whispering lies in your ear for decades. You're too old. Your time has passed. God uses young people for big things. But God doesn't operate on man's timeline. He operates on eternity's calendar. And according to heaven's schedule, your finest hour is not behind you, it's breaking through the dawn of tomorrow. Moses was 80 when he parted the Red Sea. Sarah was 90 when she laughed at impossibility and birthed nations. Caleb was 85 when he declared, "Give me this mountain." Your age isn't your expiration date, it's your activation code. But here's what's happening in the spiritual realm right now that you can't see with natural eyes. Angels are moving. Demonic assignments are being cancelled. Resources are being redirected toward your life. Doors that have been locked for generations are creaking open. Divine appointments are being scheduled. Supernatural encounters are being arranged. Deuteronomy 31:8 promises, "The Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." He goes before you. While you've been worried about your future, God has already been there, preparing your way, removing obstacles, positioning blessings. You've been fighting battles that were already won. You've been solving problems that God already solved. You've been providing for needs that heaven already met. Tonight, the struggle ends. Tonight, the striving stops. Tonight, you step into the season of divine takeover. I'm talking to the grandmother who raised 5 children but always felt there was more. I'm speaking to the grandfather who built a successful career, but knew deep down he was built for kingdom impact. I'm addressing every senior citizen who has been told to step aside, when God is saying, step forward into your greatest assignment. Your wrinkles are not signs of decline, they're marks of wisdom. Your gray hair is not evidence of expiration, it's a crown of glory. Your slower pace is not weakness, it's the measured walk of someone who knows where they're going because they've been there before. The world measures your worth by your productivity. God measures your value by your proximity to eternity. The closer you get to home, the more dangerous you become to darkness. The nearer you draw to heaven, the more clearly you see what really matters. And what matters is this: you were not born to retire from purpose. You were born to graduate into glory. Right now, as these words penetrate your spirit, something ancient is awakening inside you. That dream you buried when life got hard, it's stirring. That calling you thought expired with your youth, it's rising. That fire you thought was extinguished by disappointment, it's roaring back to life. This is your moment, chosen one. This is your divine appointment with destiny. God is not asking you to summon strength you don't have. He's asking you to surrender weakness you've been carrying. He's not demanding perfection. He's offering partnership. He's not requiring that you figure it all out. He's requesting that you trust him completely. The relay race is over. You've run your leg with honor, with courage, with faithfulness that has impressed heaven itself. Now comes the handoff. Now comes the moment when you release control and watch the God of the impossible sprint toward the finish line on your behalf. If you feel this stirring in your chest, if you recognize your story in these words, if you know that tonight is your night of divine takeover, I need you to do something powerful. In the comments below, or out loud where you are, declare these words: I trust God's takeover. Say it with authority. Declare it with confidence. Because when you speak those words, hell trembles and heaven moves. Father, we come before you now with hearts wide open and hands lifted high. We surrender the weight we were never meant to carry. We release the burdens that have bent our backs and burdened our souls. Tonight, we hand you the baton. Tonight, we trust your takeover. Take our finances, Lord. Take our families. Take our health. Take our future. Take it all and make it yours. We've done enough. Now you take over. We've fought enough. Now you fight for us. We've carried enough. Now you carry us. Transform our sunset years into sunrise seasons. Turn our retirement into revival. Change our golden years into glory years. Let the world see what happens when you take over a life that's been refined by fire and tested by time. In Jesus' mighty name, Amen. You felt it, didn't you? When those words hit your spirit, you've done enough. Something inside your chest just broke open. Not broke apart, broke open. Like a dam that's been holding back a river for 70 years, finally cracking, and all that water comes rushing out. You've done enough. You've done enough. You've done enough. Let me say that again, slower this time, because your soul needs to hear it in a different frequency. You have done enough. Dear one, I need you to picture something with me. There's an old soldier, weathered by 1,000 battles, standing in a field where the smoke is finally clearing. His uniform is torn. His boots are worn through. His hands shake as he reaches for his sword, not to fight, but to lay it down. For the first time in decades, he hears his commander's voice cutting through the silence. Stand down, warrior. I'll take it from here. That soldier is you. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been fighting wars that weren't yours to fight. You've been carrying weapons that were too heavy for human hands. You've been standing guard over territories that God never asked you to defend. And now, in this sacred moment, your commander is stepping onto the battlefield. The war is over, and your commander has stepped in. But here's what breaks my heart, and maybe it'll break yours too. How many nights have you lain awake, your mind racing through every mistake, every missed opportunity, every time you felt like you let God down? How many mornings have you dragged yourself out of bed, feeling like you had to earn your place in his kingdom all over again? You've been trying to be your own savior when the Savior himself is saying, "Child, step aside. This was never your burden to carry." Picture a grandmother, maybe it's you, sitting in her kitchen at 3 a.m. Her hands are clenched so tight around a coffee cup, that her knuckles are white. She's been gripping worry like a lifeline for so long that she's forgotten what it feels like to unclench her fists. 60 years of holding on to control. 60 years of trying to fix what only God can mend. And then, in the silence of that kitchen, she hears it. Not with her ears, but in the deepest part of her spirit. Let go. I've got this. Watch her hands slowly open. Watch the tension leave her shoulders. Watch 60 years of carrying the world finally fall away. That's the aftershock of surrender, beloved. It's not the earthquake, it's the settling that comes after the ground stops shaking. It's your nervous system finally remembering what peace feels like. Isaiah 26:3 promises, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." Perfect peace, not partial peace, not temporary peace, perfect peace. But here's the stunning truth hidden in that verse. The Hebrew word for perfect is shalom, shalom. It's repeated twice. Double peace, complete peace. The kind of peace that your great-grandmother prayed you'd experience but never saw herself. You know what's happening to you right now? Your spiritual DNA is being rewritten. Every cell in your body that learned to operate in survival mode is being reprogrammed for abundance mode. Every thought pattern that was carved by worry is being smoothed over by trust. But I need to ask you something that might sting a little. How long have you been afraid to fully surrender? How long have you been keeping one hand on the steering wheel while asking God to drive? How long have you been praying, "Your will be done," with your mouth while your heart whispers, "But here's my backup plan"? Jesus said in Matthew 6:26, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" Much more valuable, not slightly more, not somewhat more, much more valuable. But you've been living like an orphan when you're royalty. You've been scraping for crumbs when you own the bakery. You've been rationing grace when God's storehouse is infinite. What happens when God takes over completely? What will shift first, your body, your mind, your relationships? Let me tell you what I've witnessed in 40 years of ministry. When someone truly surrenders, not the church surrender where you raise your hand and sit back down, but the kitchen floor at 3 a.m., surrender, everything changes. Their blood pressure drops. Their sleep deepens. Their words carry new authority. Even their children start calling more often because they sense something different in their parents' voice. Your health will shift because stress can't survive in the presence of perfect trust. Your finances will shift because God delights in providing for those who stop trying to be their own provider. Your relationships will shift because people are drawn to the peace that radiates from someone who has truly let go. But here's the question that will determine everything. Are you ready to find out what happens when God takes over completely? Are you ready to discover who you become when you stop trying to be God and start trusting Him? Right now, wherever you are, I want you to whisper these words. Don't just think them. Speak them into the atmosphere. Lord, I release. Lord, I receive. Say it again. Lord, I release. Lord, I receive. One more time, and this time, let something go that you've been gripping for decades. Lord, I release. Lord, I receive. The aftershock is just beginning. Chosen one. Because what I'm about to show you next will reveal exactly what God does when He takes complete control over a surrendered life, and it will leave you wondering why you waited so long to let Him. You know what breaks my heart? It's not the battles you fought. It's not even the scars you carry. What breaks my heart is that you think those scars disqualify you when God sees them as your credentials. Listen to me, chosen one. Every single thing that tried to destroy you, every financial collapse that left you eating beans for dinner, every diagnosis that made you question if God had forgotten your address, every betrayal from people you trusted most, none of it was random, none of it was punishment. It was preparation. The very things that crushed you will become the very things that crown you. You think I'm speaking poetry. I'm speaking prophecy. Genesis 50:20 declares with thunderous authority, what you intended for harm, God intended for good. Not might intend, not could intend, intended. past tense, already decided, already decreed in the courts of heaven before the first tear ever fell down your cheek. But here's what's going to shock you to your core. That recession in 2008 that wiped out your retirement, that wasn't the enemy winning, that was God positioning you. Because now, 15 years later, you understand something about financial devastation that the comfortable will never comprehend. You've learned to live on less, trust more, and find joy in places where others find only despair. You've become dangerous to the kingdom of darkness because you can't be bought with what this world offers. That heart attack at 67 that left you staring at hospital ceiling tiles wondering if this was the end, that wasn't your body betraying you. That was heaven downloading something into your spirit that could only be received in complete stillness. In that sterile room, with machines beeping around you, God whispered secrets about eternity that healthy people will never hear. Now you walk with authority over fear because you've looked death in the eye and discovered that even the valley of the shadow holds no terror for those who know their shepherd. Think about Job for a moment. This man lost everything: his wealth, his children, his health, his reputation. His own wife told him to curse God and die. But Job 42:10 reveals heaven's mathematics. The Lord restored Job's fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. Twice as much. That's not just restoration, that's divine multiplication through devastation. Your devastation wasn't your destruction, it was your renovation. I'm talking to the grandmother who raised her grandchildren because their parents couldn't. You think that burden aged you prematurely? No, beloved. That burden transformed you into a living fortress of love. Those children didn't rob you of your golden years, they gave you golden purpose. And now they carry your DNA of resilience into a generation that desperately needs to see what unbreakable looks like. I'm speaking to the veteran who came home broken, haunted by memories that won't fade. You think those nightmares make you weak? Brother, sister, those scars make you a warrior in ways the civilian world can't fathom. Your trauma has taught you to recognize pain in others before they even speak. You've become a living bridge between hell and healing, and countless souls will cross over because you refuse to let your wounds become graves. Here's the picture I want you to see: a chessboard. For decades, the enemy has been moving his pieces: unemployment, illness, loss, betrayal, thinking he had you in checkmate. He's been gloating, thinking he's won the game. But suddenly, God reaches down and flips the entire board. Every piece that was in position to destroy you is now positioned to elevate you. That's what's happening right now in your life. The reversal has begun. Isaiah 61:3 promises something that will make you weep with joy, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. But notice something profound. God doesn't remove the ashes, He transforms them into beauty. He doesn't erase the mourning, He converts it into oil of joy. Your pain doesn't disappear, chosen one. It gets repurposed, it gets weaponized for the kingdom. It becomes the very foundation upon which your greatest ministry is built. Right now, there's a 4-5-year-old woman sitting in her car in a Walmart parking lot, crying because she just lost her job. She's thinking about ending it all. But you, yes, you who lost your job at 58 and found your calling at 65, you're going to walk into her life at exactly the right moment and say the words that save her soul. Your unemployment wasn't your failure. It was your training for becoming someone else's lifeline. There's a young man addicted to substances, convinced he's worthless, ready to give up. But you who battled your own demons for 30 years before finding freedom, you carry something in your voice that cuts through his despair like a sword through darkness. Your addiction wasn't your weakness. It was your education in the power of deliverance. This is the divine reversal, beloved. Every valley becomes a voice. Every pit becomes a pulpit. Every grave becomes a garden where hope grows wild. But here's the urgency burning in my spirit right now. Time is running out. Not your time, God's time. The moment of reversal is here, but it requires your participation. It demands that you stop seeing yourself as damaged goods and start recognizing yourself as refined gold. It requires that you stop hiding your story and start sharing your testimony. The world needs to see what happens when someone who's been to hell and back still chooses to praise God. They need to witness what faith looks like when it's been tested by fire and emerged unburned. They need the hope that only comes from someone who's walked through the valley of the shadow of death and discovered that even there, goodness and mercy were following. Your reversal isn't just personal, chosen one. It's prophetic. It's a sign to this generation that God still turns mourning into dancing, that He still makes ways where there seem to be no ways, that He still specializes in impossible mathematics where loss equals gain and endings become beginnings. If you can feel something shifting in the atmosphere around your life right now, if your spirit is recognizing the sound of heaven's reversal beginning, then type reversal in the comments. Or if you're alone, whisper it into the silence. This isn't just a word, it's a declaration that you're ready to see God flip every script the enemy wrote about your life. Because what's coming next will prove that your greatest comeback was always hidden inside your greatest breakdown. Dear chosen one, I need to tell you something that might shock you to your core. That season of your life when you felt invisible, forgotten, pushed aside when the world told you your best years were behind you, and God seemed silent as stone. That wasn't abandonment, that was assignment. Every morning you woke up wondering if you mattered. Every night you fell asleep questioning if your prayers were bouncing off the ceiling. Every moment you felt like a ghost, walking through your own life, carrying dreams that seemed too late, too old, too impossible. You thought God had forgotten your address, but heaven was actually hiding you for a reason so strategic, so profound, that if the enemy had known what was brewing in your wilderness, he would have tried to destroy you before you could emerge. You see, there's a pattern in Scripture that religious folks won't tell you because it's too dangerous, too revolutionary. Every single person God used to shake nations first went through what I call the hidden season. Moses, 40 years tending sheep in a desert, thinking his calling had died with his youth. 40 years. Can you imagine? The man destined to split seas and speak face to face with the Almighty, forgotten in sand and silence. But here's what Moses didn't know during those scorching days. Every sunrise in that wilderness was a classroom. Every sheep he guided was training for leading millions. Every moment he felt wasted was actually being invested in the kind of character that could handle the weight of miracles without breaking. Anna the prophetess, 84 years old when she finally saw the Christ child. 84. Decades of waiting in the temple, praying while others passed by thinking she was just another forgotten old woman. But Luke 2:36 tells us she was there night and day, fasting and praying. What looked like a life of emptiness was actually a life of preparation for the most significant prophetic moment in human history. The silence wasn't absence. The silence was preparation. The silence wasn't absence. The silence was preparation. The silence wasn't absence. The silence was preparation. David spent 7 years running from cave to cave while Saul hunted him like a wild animal. 7 years hiding in holes, eating scraps, wondering if the oil Samuel poured over his head was just ceremonial theater. But 1 Samuel 22 reveals something stunning. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. God was using David's hidden season to build an army of broken people who would become mighty warriors. What if I told you that your broken season was actually your boot camp? What if every rejection, every financial struggle, every health scare, every moment you felt like giving up was God building muscle in your spirit that regular comfort could never develop? You've been asking the wrong question. You've been asking God, when will you use me? But heaven has been answering, I'm using you right now. Every tear is teaching you compassion. Every loss is building your faith. Every silent year is stockpiling the wisdom you'll need when I unleash you on this generation. Look at your hands right now. Look at those lines, those age spots, those tremors maybe. The world sees decline, but I see decree. I see hands that have been seasoned by fire, tested by time, refined by rejection. Those aren't old hands, those are authorized hands. Hands that have earned the right to speak with authority because they've gripped hope when everything was falling apart. Here's the shocking truth that will rewrite your entire life story. Your waiting was not wasted. It was heaven's training ground. Every year you thought was lost was actually being invested in dividends that are about to pay out in ways that will leave you speechless. The enemy convinced you that your season had passed. That innovation belongs to the young, that influence expires with age, that God's big moves require youthful energy. But that's the greatest lie ever whispered in a chosen one's ear. Because wisdom doesn't come from education, it comes from survival. Authority doesn't come from position, it comes from persecution. And power doesn't come from perfection, it comes from being proven in the pit. Moses was 80 when he stood before Pharaoh. Abraham was 100 when Isaac was born. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your age isn't your expiration date, it's your activation code. Every chosen one has a season of silence before the sound of victory. Every chosen one has a season of silence before the sound of victory. But when preparation collides with divine timing, when the hidden years meet the harvest years, when the wilderness warrior finally gets the word, "Go," miracles don't just happen, they erupt. Something is shifting in the spiritual realm right now. Angels are moving, doors are creaking open, hearts are being prepared. And God is looking across this nation for his hidden ones, his seasoned saints, his wilderness warriors who've been refined by fire and proven by pain. The silence is about to break, the waiting is about to end, the hidden season is about to explode into the most powerful chapter of your entire existence. But first, you need to understand that every moment of feeling forgotten was actually you being positioned. Every day of feeling invisible was you being protected. Every season of silence was your spirit being loaded with ammunition for battles you didn't even know were coming. I need you to do something right now that might feel strange, but will anchor this truth in your soul. Find a piece of paper, a notebook, anything you can write on, and write these words. My silent years were not wasted. Say it out loud as you write it. Let your hand trace what your heart is finally beginning to believe, because what happens next in your life will require everything those hidden years deposited in your spirit. The very battles that almost broke you are about to become the victories that define you. But are you ready to step out of the wilderness and into the warfare? Are you prepared to discover what happens when heaven finally says, "Now it's your time"? Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to hold these truths close to your heart like precious jewels that can never be stolen. Remember this, your silent years were not wasted. They were your wilderness classroom where God built character that comfort could never create. Every tear you've cried in secret has been collected in heaven's bottles, and not one drop was meaningless. Your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. The very struggles that made you feel forgotten were actually God's way of preparing you for something so magnificent that ordinary people couldn't handle it. You have been marked, not damaged, chosen, not rejected, prepared, not passed over. But most importantly, beloved, you are not walking this journey alone. Even in your darkest hour, when silence felt like abandonment, the God who spoke worlds into existence has never stopped working behind the scenes of your life. He's been moving mountains you couldn't see, opening doors you haven't found yet, and orchestrating blessings you can't even imagine. And right here, in this sacred community of believers, you have thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your struggles because they've walked the same path. We see you. We believe in you. We will pray with you. You don't have to carry tomorrow's burdens alone. Let me ask you this question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. Now that you know your waiting was preparation, now that you understand your silence was assignment, now that you realize God has been taking over all along, how will you walk differently when you wake up tomorrow morning? Before I release you into your destiny, Join me in this prayer. Close your eyes, feel the presence of the Almighty surrounding you, and let these words wash over your weary soul, a prayer of divine takeover. Heavenly Father, Creator of all that is, was, and ever will be, I come before you now carrying every person who has watched this message with a hungry heart. Lord, you see their tears. You know their struggles. You've counted every sleepless night, every whispered prayer, every moment they wondered if you remembered their name. Father, I place my hand on their shoulder through these words and declare that their season of carrying impossible burdens alone is over. You are taking over their finances, their health, their relationships, their purpose. Where there has been lack, release abundance. Where there has been sickness, pour out healing. Where there has been loneliness, surround them with divine connections. Where there has been confusion, grant crystal clarity. God, breathe new life into their tired bones. Restore the years the locusts have eaten. Turn their mourning into dancing, their ashes into beauty, their test into testimony. Let them feel your presence so powerfully right now that every doubt melts away and every fear loses its grip. Open doors that no man can shut. Provide resources they haven't even thought to ask for. Send the right people at the right time. Give them dreams and visions that will guide their steps. And most of all, Lord, let them wake up tomorrow, knowing beyond any shadow of doubt that they are loved, they are chosen, and they are never, ever alone. In Jesus' mighty name, we receive this divine takeover. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what God spoke to your heart today. What shifted in your spirit during this message? What are you believing Him for in this new season? Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to keep holding on. Type "God is taking over" if you're ready to release control and let Him lead. Ask us to pray for specific areas of your life. This community believes in the power of agreement, and when we pray together, heaven moves. And if this message touched your soul, please share it with someone who needs to remember they're not forgotten. There's someone in your life right now, a family member, a friend, a neighbor who feels exactly like you felt when you started watching this video. They need to know their silent years weren't wasted. They need to understand that God is taking over for them too. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart, for letting these words penetrate the deepest places of your soul. Your time is precious, and you chose to invest it in seeking God's heart for your life. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your calling. If this is your first time here, welcome to the family. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of believers who gather here regularly to be encouraged, equipped, and empowered for kingdom living. Turn on notifications so you never miss a message that might be exactly what your spirit needs to hear. Remember, beloved, you are not retiring from purpose. You are graduating into it. You are not fading away. You are finally coming alive. You are not too old, too late, or too broken. You are chosen. You are loved. And God is taking over. Until we meet again, walk in the confidence of who you are. Rest in the certainty of His love, and know that your greatest chapter is not behind you. It's just beginning. God bless you, warrior. Your takeover starts now.